every Monday night, bringing you conversations with special guests and people with different perspectives. What we like to do here is talk about spirituality from a practical perspective, and we want to create ways that we could use it moment by moment. So, one of the things we want to do is guide you through that process of finding joy, living your best life with grace and ease. So, we've come across a lot of different circumstances and a lot of situations. So, being Reverend G, I feel like I could do the Reverend G show from everywhere. So, I'm on a vacation and I'm out here just living and loving life. And I realized I had to find an alternate spot to do the show. So here we are out here, and I found this spot, and I'm really excited that it's all working out. That you can see me, there are lighting issues and all that, but I'm here to bring you these conversations. So I'd like you guys to remember to follow me on Instagram as Reverend Grenetta and on YouTube and Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mace. So tonight we have Reverend Lucy Lila Nelson. Reverend Lucy is a spiritual counselor. She's a stress management educator. She's a yoga and a meditation teacher. She does positive psychology coaching, and she is a social justice activist. I met Lucy at One Spirit. We were both ordained as interfaith ministers, and we've been on this journey to find our ministry and how we could support each other. I've known her for 10 years. So I'm really, really excited to have her join us tonight to share with us her spiritual journey and some of the tools that you'll be able to use. So, welcome, Lucy. Hello, hi. Lucy's here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now I can. How are you? I can see you too. How are you?
I'm good. So good to see you.
I know. So excited that it all worked out. So introduce yourself to everyone, Lucy.
I'm sorry, say that again. I'm going to turn off my AC.
Introduce yourself. Yeah, introduce yourself.
So what to say? Well, I will be honest with you. I did not prepare for this, right? And in part is because, I was trying to see if there was an introduction. I don't know if you share this, but we've known each other for so long. And this feels like just one of our conversations, it's like we can get on the phone with no topic in mind and then an hour goes by and poof, that's it. So I will just say a little bit about myself. Where to start? Well, I will say that I started my spiritual practice when I was very young. I was introduced to meditation at the age of 10. And so one could say, wow, and I'm 41. So one could say I've had 30 years of practice, but the truth is I haven't, because my spiritual journey has not been a straight arrow. It has not been a linear experience, let's be honest. So a part of it is, I've experienced different things at a young age, but challenges occurred. I grew up in France, and, I was sort of transported in the US, at the age of 17. And so that created a whole new set of conversation about my spirituality. And I was not put in a place such as great as New York with so much cultural diversity, spiritual diversity. I was in the south of Florida, which I do love, nothing wrong with it, but I had a really hard time connecting my spiritual roots there, and being from a different country, different background. So I did start to engage in different ways. I was exploring sort of what spirituality meant to me at different stages of my life. And so, I definitely dabbled into the new age experiences. I loved, I fell in love with Buddhism. But then, I was a sort of what they call a recovering Catholic, a recovering French
Mhm.
Catholic. Um,
Mhm.
and, I was yearning to have a structure that infused spirit in my life. I
Mhm.
wanted that, but I kept
Mhm.
diving into these different religions or spiritual modality and not fully feeling nourished.
Mhm.
So for me,
Okay.
I realized through this long, long journey, um, what I discovered for me, what worked is I can't just find one thing that fits everything.
Mhm.
And a
Okay.
big part of that is because for a long time, I was really concerned about my spiritual uh, relationship with a higher power, which has changed over the years. And I was really focused on my emotional and mental well being, right? And so for, I would say, 20 years, that was my focus. And eventually I started getting older and I realized, wait a minute, I need to get the
Mhm.
body involved in this conversation, because my body's
Mhm.
lagging.
Mhm.
And it's like I can do all the emotional, spiritual, and mental work that I want. But if my body is struggling, then it's affecting my mind, it's affecting my emotion. And, in some ways, I was noticing that I was feeling so much more frustration, with my body. I discovered there was a lot of different ailments that I had no control over, but I could change my experience with my body. And that also changed my experience with, my relationship with myself, which and spirit in some ways, and I will say when I talk about spirit, I will use different words, but spirit,
Mhm.
higher power, God, I'm a yogi, so I will like Atman or the soul, all of this is like the God within me and the connection to source, right? And source, is the sort of one transcendental love energy. And so what I was realizing is, my body, my mind and my emotion and that connection to myself, to the kingdom within, was constantly being disrupted by my physical body. And so what
Mhm.
really shifted for me and what really changed is when I started doing yoga, meditation through the
Mhm.
practices of yoga, which we can talk about in a little
Okay.
bit. I
Mhm.
started diving
Mhm.
into stress management and what did that mean, starting to learn about it,
Mhm.
practice it,
Mhm.
sharing with
Mhm.
others. And I was a life coach for a while, but I decided to start focusing on the modality of positive psychology, because positive psychology based
Mhm.
coaching gives so much tools. And a big part of it is about strength building. So a lot of times for a lot of years,
Mhm.
I was looking about what was wrong with me and how to fix that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
through the
Mhm.
mind body connection, through the positive psychology based strength building, I was coming from an empowering place versus a powerlessness place, right? So,
So I'm interested in that for a moment. The positive psychology part really interests me. And now that you brought that up, one of the things that is interesting is how does that support people
sure.
in their everyday life, and how can they use this concept as a tool?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And me, I can chat and chat and chat, so keep cutting me off.
Right, but when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I want to hear about the positive
Yeah,
psychology.
absolutely. So, yeah, thank you so much. So, part of it is positive psychology. Um, as far as the coaching, I'm only going to speak as far as the coaching platform. They call it
Hmm.
positive
Okay.
interventions. There are interventions that you can do to
Mhm.
experience different things. So let's say, you know, and I would encourage people to look at strength building and, VIA character. I think it's .com or .org, allows you to take a test,
Mhm.
assess what your strongest characteristics and strengths are, and then it shows you what
Mhm.
are the lowest. And sometimes what happens is the ones are lower because we haven't put priority to it. But maybe, something like a motivation or love for learning can help us in our day to day. So how do we fuel, let's say, a lower strength value, right? So let's say
Mhm.
one of them is hope, right? And hope
Mhm.
is, kind of low at a lower score than other things, and you need hope, right? So you can
Mhm.
start doing things like a gratitude journal every day, right? You can start noticing and you can do it in various different ways. One is you can acknowledge, what you've already done, what you've already accomplished. You can write things about, here is a challenge, here is how I prevailed. Why can't I do it again? Right? So if we start
Mm.
noticing, there's so many things that we do on a day-to-day base and over our lifetime that seems so irrelevant, or we don't give it the proper attention to say, wait a minute, I went through this and I got through it, right? And so when you
Mhm.
start looking at that, that gives you hope. That gives you hope that today you can get through what you need to get through, right? So that would
Mhm.
be what is called a positive intervention. That's one of the things. The other thing
Mhm.
is, looking at what your highest value of strengths are and keep diving into that, right? So if somebody is in
Mhm.
a transition and they don't really, there's so many transitions happening right now, right? Like, let's,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know and I
So
want,
many.
yeah, and I want to take a moment to just acknowledge that, I am grateful for my life experience, and I'm grateful for all the tools that hopefully we can share. And if a little bit of this is resonating, if people can take anything from that or say, oh yes, I really enjoyed when I was doing that, or that particular tool helped me with my mental
Mhm.
capacity, or it helped me with my stress, or this is really the time to do it. It always
Mhm.
is a time, but now is really the time. And what
Mhm.
happens is when it's really time to activate our tools, that's when sometimes we are so quickly, not able to engage with it. Isn't that
Mhm.
incredible how, we know we need to do this to help ourselves, but sometimes that's the first thing that goes, right?
Mhm. So
So
you would say, I guess what I'm thinking is you would say that this tool, the positive psychology, comes down to first of all recognizing what your strengths are, right?
yeah, and I want
And
to get
then
back
once
to
you know what those strengths, then you take that and use them to support you in just living your life. These strengths, you focus on the strengths, right?
yeah. So there was a
So the positive psychology part of that, go ahead, talk about the positive psychology. Is
Sure.
that the
So
basis of
all of
positive
that.
psychology and being happy and
So that's one part of it. So there's a lot of myth
okay.
about positive psychology and this whole happiness thing. That's one part of it. So
Mhm.
the part of it is to identify what you believe is going to make you happy, and and to fuel all the other stuff that's going to create purpose, that's going to create engagement in your life, that's going to give you vitality in your life. All these different pieces that we each believe is going to lead us to a happy experience in life. So
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
but that's a small part of it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So the part that is very important is when I was talking about strength, I was talking about, okay, let's look at the lower score strength. What can we do to raise it up if we want to? And then the other part is, what is our higher score already? And what can we do with that strength to either change our experiences or support our experiences in the day to day? So I'm going to give you an example. And this is all
Mhm.
positive psychology intervention,
Mhm.
life coach stuff, right? So
Okay.
somebody is going through a challenge,
Okay.
and we do a strength building evaluation. And well, let's face it, that's my one example I'm going to give you. So and
Mhm.
and I don't think you'll be surprised, but one of my highest score is a love of learning,
Okay.
right? So, okay,
Mhm.
so I have these challenges. What can the love of learning as a strength give me? Well, because I love learning so much, I
Mhm.
can look at this challenge and break it down as a learning opportunity.
Okay.
What
Okay.
do I, and it comes in different ways. What do I need to learn about myself in this current situation? What can I learn about this topic that will make
Mhm.
me understand better how I can navigate through this challenge? Right? What
Mhm.
book can I read? Let's be honest.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so,
Right.
so that would be a way to look at, okay, we have these day-to-day challenges. What are our strengths and how can we support ourselves? And through each virtue, I think, or values, virtue, value, or strength, I think there are 24 of them. And each one of them has a particular description, a definition, and a way to sort of um, fuel it, if you will, or just to
Mhm.
look at them from the perspective of, here are my values, here are my strengths. How can I experience my life in a way that's fueled with that, right? So that's definitely
Mhm.
a way to
Mhm.
do it.
That's what I was trying to think of. The takeaway here would
Yes.
be, how does this support me? And you're saying to use these strengths to
Yeah.
fuel your life, and recognizing what they are will support that, right? And I know what I would like to lead into now is you talk about spiritual resilience,
Yes.
right? And so as we lead into, using positive psychology as a tool, when we talk about spiritual resilience, can you define that and then talk about how we can use it as
Yeah.
a concept?
Yeah. Yeah. So, positive psychology, as we know, it was founded by Martin Seligman. And he created this beautiful
Mm-hmm.
acronym, which is called PERMA. My amazing
Mm-hmm.
positive psychology teacher, Emilia, she came up with PERMA V. So it was originally
Mm-hmm.
PERMA, then it was PERMA V. And, we look at it, and these acronyms are important because they're the totality of it. And one is positivity, one is engagement, one is relationship, one is
Mm-hmm.
meaning, right? And one is achievement. And the V is
Mm-hmm.
for vitality. So part of
Mm-hmm.
it is to infuse all these different parts, and that's where the happiness comes into place, right? What I will say
Mm-hmm.
about,
Okay.
yeah, right. So sometimes like relationship, like how important our relationship right now, that we're not able to hug and touch and connect with our friends and our relationships. So a lot of us have naturally started to like get on Zoom, call everybody, right? Because what happens when we don't
Mm-hmm.
feel
Mm-hmm.
disconnected, and when we feel disconnected, we feel alone, we feel like we can't get through what we need to get through, and all these things. So intervention, a tool here would be like, okay, so I'm feeling alone, and it's a reality. This is what I'm feeling. And it's not just alone, I'm feeling lonely because I have so much burden
Mm-hmm.
about the present and what the future will look like. Let infuse that relationship a little bit. Call my friends, call my family, get connected to the heart space, right? So that's a way to do it. Meaning for me
Mm-hmm.
was super important. Meaning and purpose is interchangeable. So for me and us, I mean, Grenada, we have been on this spiritual journey for 10 years, defining our spiritual purpose, and how do we share everything
Right.
we've experienced, everything we've learned. How do we share that with our world?
Mm-hmm.
And so meaning and purpose,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
especially when people are in transition, well, let's pause there for a minute. what COVID did, what the awareness on Black Lives Matter did, what a lot of this has happened, it has created such a significant pause and has,
Mhm.
I believe, asked us to rip away our old roles, our old identity,
Mhm.
and dive deep
Mhm.
inside,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Right. Right.
And a lot of people are
Mhm.
confused. A lot of people don't know what to do. They don't know how to recreate a life. They don't know how to,
Mhm.
connect to this current reality. They don't know how to be aware of all the injustice that are going on, that have been going on for so long, right? So there's a lot of
Mhm. Right.
angst personally, community, socially, nationally. There's so much angst going on. So a good way to, kind of support ourselves is like, well, what does this all mean to me? What is the purpose
Mm.
now? Right? How do I become a contributing member of society, perhaps from a different perspective, because COVID is happening, because of all, this awareness around, racism and around a lot of things that's happening. How do we come from a different perspective and create a better future for ourselves, right? And this is
So
where,
yeah, what I think about is, so what can you offer then to support that? And that's what we're here saying. So how can we be a contribution? So what do we offer? One thing I know that there has to be a lot of healing going on.
yes.
So how do you offer that healing and how do people get that, right? When we talk about, spiritual tools, right? We try to look at, well, what can support people? What are my things? Is what can support me day by day?
Mhm.
And at this time in particular, what are the spiritual tools that can really support people? And I think that's one of the things I like to, the contributions would be, really supporting people and making it through these times and what that might look like.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for asking that question, because I realized that I was sharing a spiritual tool, but I wasn't clear about it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the things that I've shared so far is about self-reflection.
Mm.
It's about, examining the self. It's about asking questions, right? It's about having this conversation with the self, because all of this is about understanding our relationship with ourselves at a conscious level. Because here's why. If I have
Mm-hmm.
the time, I'm gonna tell you about yoga, I'm gonna tell you about meditation, I'm gonna tell you about EFT, I'm gonna tell you about all kinds of things, right? But if we don't
Mm-hmm.
know what we need, how do we
Mm-hmm.
pick up these different tools,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
So the first step is understanding our needs.
Yes. Yes. And go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the first thing is, creating a space for yourself with yourself so that you can start having a conversation with yourself, right?
Mm.
And you can do that in different ways, right? So journaling is a fantastic thing to do. And journaling is not writing. It's not, journaling is simply about putting thoughts to paper. That's it. We don't have to worry about the grammar. We don't have to worry about sentences and, all of that. We just want to be able to put whatever's in here somewhere when we can see it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another way is there are a lot of great contemplative practices. Thomas Merton, right? He did a lot of contemplation practices, contemplative prayers, where you choose a prayer that you relate to, and then you pause. You let the prayer, you let the resonance of the words, of the meaning kind of settle into your being, and
Mm-hmm.
then you listen. So, a big part is we need to learn how to communicate with ourselves better, to understand ourselves better. And then we need to ask, spirit to guide us, and we need to listen.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
So, and
Mhm.
then,
Right.
right? And then, we can understand a little bit better what it is that we need. Now, I'm going to
Mhm.
pause and I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. And there's
Mhm.
a reason for it. Sometimes,
Mhm.
that wouldn't be me if I didn't do that. So sometimes the suffering is so deep that we can't go into ourselves. Like it would just pull us down,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and part of knowing oneself is to know that too. And I don't believe after all this year, there's one way for everything, right? So it's really
Right. Right.
about if you're heartbroken over a lot of things, or if you're feeling suffering for a lot, I mean, there's certainly a lot of reasons to be right now, then what
Mhm.
you may need to is attend to healing right away. Right
Mhm.
away. Don't
Mhm.
worry about that conversation with yourself because your body is probably telling you anyways, right?
Mhm.
So, and a way to do that, I have, and this is from a yogic perspective, like one of my
Mhm.
favorite practices to do when there's healing required and it's deep suffering is called yoga nidra. And I don't know if we can post it somewhere. Does it matter if
Mhm.
I type it in? No, right?
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
No.
so it's yoga nidra, and it's called a deep
Mhm.
yogic sleep. And the intent is not so much to go to sleep, it's to get
Mhm.
into a state of relaxation where you are sort of still aware and not yet asleep. And in that space,
Mhm.
there's a
Mhm.
plane there. In that space, this is where there's a lot of healing possible, right? And so
Mhm.
you do
Okay.
most of the time you do lay down, you relax, and you're guided. I would recommend googling it or not, and you're guided through different awareness,
Mhm.
body, the breath, what they call the pranic yoga, the pranic body, so like the energetic body, like in Reiki they talk about the emotional body, very similar.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of opportunities for healing.
Mhm.
So yoga nidra is definitely one of my go-to. I had a yoga nidra session today with myself, and it was beautiful.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, okay.
So
Mhm.
that's one of the
Mhm.
things. Another thing that I do love to practice is called emotional freedom technique.
Mhm.
It's EFT or
Mhm.
tapping. So this is the
Mhm.
tapping one, right? This is this one. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
love it
Mhm.
because what it does, in my own experience, um, it names what they call it, quote unquote, negative. I call it resistance. It names what is resistant.
Mhm.
So, for example,
Mhm.
one of my triggers that came up during all of this is I'm not enough. I'm not enough. That's one of my old narrative that's been with me for 41 years. I'm not enough. So you would tap,
Mhm.
say, even though
Mm.
I'm not enough,
Mm.
I feel that I'm not enough.
Mhm.
I totally and completely love and accept myself,
Mhm.
right? So even though there's this feeling,
Mhm.
there's this
Mhm.
resistance, or this old narratives, you name it. You name it. And when you're naming it, it's coming out. It's coming out of you. And then you keep moving and you're like, okay, I am enough. I have seen experiences where I am enough. I believe I'm enough. No matter what my shortcomings are in life, which I have many, I am still enough.
Mhm.
And you go through this process, which is truly amazing because it doesn't, one of the things that I want to say, and then you'll ask me questions, but one of the things that one of the
I'll
things
ask you question. Go ahead.
one of the things that I really want to say is one thing that I had to learn in this journey is and honestly this lesson did not come until a couple of years ago, so it took me a long time to get there.
Okay.
The lesson is to not use spirituality or spiritual tools as a way to spiritually bypass your experiences.
Got it. Right. Exactly. explain that though to people to get it, because we often talk about spiritual bypass, and I hear people speak of it, and what does it really mean to the normal person who's just not always talking about spirituality and what that means when you say a spiritual bypass?
Sure, thank you. Yes. So a good example is I am feeling let's see, what am I feeling? I have stress in my mind. I'm stressed over work and I have some deadlines that I need to meet, but I have all kinds of things happening. The internet is going wrong, I can't get my stuff together. I need to take care of my kids. Like there's all this and I feel stressed and I feel stressed and I feel stressed, right? So spiritual bypassing would be, oh, well, in spirituality, they say just think positive, right? And so you're like, okay, I'm thinking positive, I'm thinking positive, I'm thinking positive, I'm thinking positive. How much good is that doing to change your actual experience? Another example is to say, okay, let me pause. I am feeling all of this. First and foremost, it is okay. It is okay. You validate oneself, you accept oneself, you forgive oneself for just having these experiences, and you say, it's okay. It's okay. You're here with yourself. And then one of the things that you can do is the breath practices, the breathing practices, right? Taking some deep breaths, right? So you're not just, and that will automatically shift your mind. Now, it doesn't mean that after this, you're not going to still go with, you know what? I am stressed. It is okay. And I can still get this done within this period of time. So you're not, go ahead.
No, so I was just saying, so okay, what I'm hearing is you're saying not to just jump to, and that's really hard to do anyway, to say I'm sad and then jump straight to being happy, right? Without going through a process of understanding, take the moment, like we say, take the moment to acknowledge what's really going on, right? And then move forward in how you can support it. So I understand it from that perspective.
But then again, it goes back to my contradiction earlier. It's like sometimes you need the bypass to get through the moments.
Yeah. In this moment.
Yes.
To come back. Like I'm a big Abraham Hicks fan, and as she says, sometimes, right, you have to get off of it. Not to say that it goes away, but in this moment, it's not going to serve you. So don't think about it right now, and come back later, because you won't create anything different in this moment. You just dig yourself more and more. Like I always say, if you have negative thoughts build upon each other, they build one on top of the others. And it's the same way positive thoughts can build. If you're in the midst of it, like I always say, try to find that one moment, find anything that can kind of give you that shift. And one of the things, as she talked about, was just the breathing. It's so, so important for having you do that shift. And that's easy. You can do it anyway. You don't have to go take training. You don't have to go learning how to tap. You don't have to go learn, you know what I'm saying? And all of those things are really, really great tools. But the breath is right there. And it's so easy to use to get you to a place of shifting, right? So I think that yoga is important for me, from my perspective, is because of the breath. It's about the body, the breath. She's like my whole world, right? And I know that who you are. And maybe you would like to share some highlights of how yoga has supported you on your spiritual journey.
Yes, yes. And I do want to wrap up the topic from before. Um, I love Abraham Hicks. We share that love. And those that don't know, definitely check it out. And in part of it, I always vision it in my mind. We have these different neighborhoods in the mind. And one is like a flowery neighborhood, like, there's water, there's trees, everybody's happy. And the other one is dark, there's a storm, the houses are, broken down, there's nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so what neighborhood am I in right now? Right? So
Mm-hmm.
I always want to get out of the dark neighborhood, but I want to create enough strength in my mental capacity and emotional capacity where I'm not afraid of it either. So I can visit it
Mm-hmm.
temporarily and be like, oh, okay, you're still here. We're still doing that. All right. I see you. I
Mm-hmm.
feel you. But right now, I'm
Right, right.
go to the other neighborhood. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's about being neutral, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
say that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a great way of looking at it.
yeah. And there's, what I love also about, these two neighborhoods in my mind is there is also the middle point, right? Which is kind of the transition point. And what I have learned
Mm-hmm.
is to be comfortable with that discomfort of not knowing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because when you're sort of there, you're not in the good, you're not in the quote unquote dark, you're just kind of there and you're like, and there's this unknown and you don't know. That's okay
Mm-hmm.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, we were moving on to talk about yoga. So I
Yes.
think yoga will be one of your, we were to talk about the top three spiritual practices, right? That
Right.
are supporting you.
Yeah.
What would they be? The top three that you can share tonight?
Sure. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, I was very, and you can see I'm still very much a mental, emotional person. That's part of who I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Granada keeps trying me to bring me back to the yoga. And I'm like, wait, but we're not done with the other stuff, right? So, I'm still working on that. That's the truth. But let's get focused. So the yoga is a huge part of my evolution and my spirituality. I kind of shared my background earlier. This is part of my space, my yogic space, and my office. And when I realized that the body needed to be part of this spiritual conversation with myself, I already had a spiritual home to go to where they already had yoga that I loved. So I just decided to make a commitment, start having this conversation with my body, and start to understand like what it meant when I was disconnected to it and what it meant when I was connected to my body. Right. So there's
Mm.
a lot of misconception about what yoga is. There's been a lot of appropriation, in the West about what yoga is. I'm going to plug in a little bit my institute, the organization I'm affiliated with, because I love them and I feel like they appreciate yoga, the origin of yoga. And they do a great job connecting mind-body relation. And the institution is called Integral Yoga, and they
Mm.
have been it comes from India. Our teacher really taught us how to pause. It's not power yoga, it's literally taking one pose at a time. We do sun salutations like movement and stuff in a flow, but it's much more, okay, let's come into a little back bend, right? So let's come into this kind of back bend here. Let's open the
Mm-hmm.
heart, open the chest, open the voice, our voice here, and
Mm-hmm.
how does it feel to be here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the
Mm-hmm.
opposite, let's fold down, which by the way, folding down, like fold forward, when you tuck your chin in, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation stress response. So if you ever feel stressed, you can just like tuck in your chin like this for just a
Mm-hmm.
few moments, right? And you kind of reshift your nervous system a little bit. So I started taking the
Mm-hmm.
classes, I started doing all that. And then what I did for home practice, I just started only doing 3 sun salutations every morning, like
Mm.
12 movements that goes one to the next. And that really takes 3 to 5 minutes, right? And that's all I did for like 6 months. And it was revolutionary for me because
Mm.
I was able to, through that practice, notice when I was stressed at work or when I was experiencing different emotions. My body has always been communicating with me, but I haven't been on the
Mm.
receiving end.
Mm-hmm.
So when
Mm-hmm.
I started practicing a little bit every day, I started receiving the information. And that helped me, that gave me a choice of how I wanted to experience that moment.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And the
Good.
breath, yeah, go ahead.
The rest. Right. As we're having these conversations, different things come to my mind, right? And I think back to when you first started, you were saying like very young, you started meditating,
Yes.
right? So would you say that, give us a little bit about your from your childhood to now,
Yeah.
like your viewpoints, how they change, the significant changes from meditating as a young kid
Mhm.
till now.
Yeah. It's funny because in some ways, when I was meditating when I was younger, it was so much easier and I just didn't know it. And I wish I had known it and I wish I had appreciated
Mm,
it because now I have 30
mm-hmm,
years of stuff that I'm constantly undoing, right? And like to stay focused,
mm,
in meditation. One thing
mm,
I will say, in my 20s and my 30s, it was very hard to meditate. And in part is because, and this is where the yoga comes into place, that was so, revealing for me and so important. My body was not able to sit in a meditation pose for a long time. So my body kept like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, but wait, I'm supposed to like meditate, but I'm uncomfortable. And
mm-hmm,
so what has helped me now, my meditation practice is always linked to yoga one way or another. And that's the true purpose of yoga, right? Like when we
mm-hmm,
think about, what the goal of yoga is, which is self-realization, a part of how we get there is through meditation, right? So my relationship through meditation has evolved from just focusing on a light. I mean, I was 10 years old and I was introducing to what I know now as tratak. It's, focus on a drishti point, and it was a candle. And I used to be able to do this with such a, I mean, I would move a little bit. I was a kid, but I was so much more focused. And then what I realized as I got older and there was more noise in my mind because I developed as a human being, like all of us, I
mm-hmm,
needed different ways to counter the noise in my mind.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I didn't know that for a long time. So I was very much into Buddhism, which there's not a lot of, it's just kind of focus on, no nothingness. I mean, of course, now there's loving kindness, metta meditation, there's different forms. So back then it wasn't so much that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had experienced different meditation with breath awareness, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized I needed a little bit more. And
So
so,
you were exposed to all of these different practices at a young age. You weren't like just Christian. You said something about Catholic. You were
yeah,
Catholic yet
yes,
exposed
yes,
to Buddhism, Hinduism, and all
yes,
of that.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I will say my
Good.
relationship with the Catholic Church kind of ended when I was about 11. I had I made this big
Oh,
announcement,
okay.
and in part of it,
At 11, you were ending it.
yeah, and part of it, to be honest, is because you know, a big part of why that happened is because I didn't see how I could develop to be a better human being to what I was experiencing at church and at school. So I remember talking to the priest and saying,
Hmm.
okay, I'm doing my confession. I'm still doing this. I'm still doing that. And I'm trying and I don't know how to do it. Oh, you're forgiven. Do your Hail Marys, do, all that, and you'll be forgiven. And while I appreciate
Hmm.
the forgiveness,
Hmm.
I wanted to learn how to be better. And I'll keep doing it week after week and after week.
Right,
And,
right,
right?
right,
So,
exactly.
and some people have better experiences than I did. It's not about,
Hmm.
I love religion and everything, but my experience with, the Catholic Church at that time, and I was going like 3, 4 times a week. I did like summer schools, like during lunch, I would go to a church for studying. So there was a lot of things, but I wasn't getting what I needed to develop my heart consciousness and build my sort of mental
Mm.
resilience, right? To be able to develop a better human being that I was at the time. I wanted to learn more, to be more.
That's interesting to know all of that at 11, right? For me, right? To understand and then be able to shift and look at Buddhism, Hinduism, and other ways that could satisfy you. So that's pretty interesting. We're getting close, and I wanted to give you the time to talk about what's important to you and what you would like to share
Hmm.
that can support people. And a lot of it is about building their own personal spiritual tools, right? And so we come and we share all these different things and hope that people can find something
Hmm.
that supports them and create their own personal.
Yeah, thank you.
So, what would you like to share?
Well, I would start with just a small story, which is, on and
Mm-mm.
off my whole life, I tried the gym. Like, I mean, even like few years ago, you should have seen my keychain. I had like 3 different members. Like, if somebody found my keychain, they'd be like, "Oh, this chick is ripped." Like, like she's so healthy, and I wasn't. And part of it is because I wanted to be healthy and I wanted to
Mm.
have a healthy experience with my body, but the gym just was not for me. So yoga is for me. Yoga is
Mm.
that's where it is for me, right? So I
Mhm,
had to
mhm,
discover that.
mhm,
If something is not
mhm,
working, let's not beat it up into ourselves and then use that against ourselves to say, "Oh, I didn't do it. I wanted to do it." No, we have so much opportunities right now to build our spiritual kit, right? So the
mhm,
first thing is
mhm,
try on different things, see what feels good. My teacher, Swami Satchidananda, said in meditation, because there's so many styles, which one do you choose? And he says, choose the one that motivates you. Choose the one that gives
mhm,
you joy. Because then you're going to keep doing it over
mm,
and over and over again. And when it gets hard, right? When it gets hard, then you can remember that joy. You can remember that you have a connection with that.
mhm,
And the
mhm.
other thing is, once you do find these elements, stick with it for a while. It doesn't
Consistency.
happen overnight, right?
Right, right, right. Exactly. Exactly. As they say, the more you do it, it becomes just a part of what you do.
Exactly.
And yeah, that is it. Just stick with it and try the different things because there are lots and lots of options
Absolutely. Absolutely.
out there. And it's interesting when I think about forgiveness as a part of your spiritual toolkit, right? It's
Yes.
something that, we talk about journaling, we talk about meditation, but that simple practice, right, can really, really support you and in times of trouble or in times where you're just not feeling great about things. The practice of forgiveness really, really supports. And a lot of it is forgiving ourselves
Yeah.
first. And then once we can do that, becomes really easy. So I'm really excited about the different practices. And with the different people that have been on the show, we've heard a lot of different great practices that can be used. So I'm excited that you came to share with us your practices. So overall, yoga and meditation are one and one, right? They go together. And what else would you say?
For me,
Positive psychology.
well, I think it goes even beyond that. I think for me, the big part of it is, which I mentioned before, self-reflection. Self-reflection is
Okay, got it. Okay, self
so,
reflection. That's good. I like that.
yeah, and you can do that through, positive psychology and positive interventions. You can do that through meditation,
Mhm.
reflective. Like a beautiful practice in meditation is to say you have a challenge or something is on your mind. You pause yourself the question and you sit and you just let your mind sort of experience itself. Let spirit, let your heart experience itself in this present moment of pause, right? And you just be with yourself.
Mhm.
For me, if
Mhm.
we can develop a certain level of self-reflection, so you know me, I offer many services, right? But my goal when I'm working with clients is not to become, I don't want clients to be dependent of me. For me, I always look at this as a short-term relationship. Maybe sometimes it's longer, right? And then after that, there's maintenance happening, right? And in part of that
Mhm.
is because I want people to know that they can empower themselves with insight. They can empower themselves with decision making. They can, so
Mhm.
part of it is a reflective component to know that about yourself. So that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Lucy, for sharing this time with me. And all the best. And I will be in touch. You have a great evening.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Love you.
Love you. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I hope that you got a lot of information that you can take away and that you can use after this conversation with Reverend Lucy. So, as a part of my goal, it is to support you in living your best life and finding joy with grace and ease. And also, as we talk about the spiritual toolkit, there are a lot of different practices that you can use. So, thank you for joining me tonight. And I would like to leave you tonight with a mindful message and taking that mindful moment to get clarity. Remember, we take a breath and then we recalibrate and we kind of shift in order to find a more positive space to be. And tonight, what I'd like you to think about is taking responsibility for your own happiness. And Reverend Lucy talked about positive psychology and happiness tonight. And it would be interesting to look into positive psychology and the whole aspect of being happy. But one of the greatest things that you can do is to take responsibility for your own happiness. So I'd like to leave you with that tonight, being responsible and finding that bit of joy. So if you like what you've heard and you want to find out more and more about what's going on, you can follow me on Instagram as Reverend Grenetta and on Facebook and YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason. So I'm going to leave you guys tonight and hope to see you next Monday. Find some happiness. Have a great evening.
I know that you're feeling me, and truthfully, I'm feeling you too. But we're in a situation with not much left to do. I just think I need to take a little time away from you. I'm caught up in my feelings, it's got me all confused. how I'm feeling like you. You really are the one for me. The way I have to deal sometimes. Tell me, how could this be? I'm seeing right through your words, 'cause only actions speak to me. Just telling you the truth now. It's all about transparency. You got me in the middle, just a tad, just a little. Got me in the middle. You got me stuck on you. Got me in the middle, just a tad, just a little. Got me in the middle. You got me stuck on you. I just need a little time to see what we could be, 'cause you might be playing me, yeah. I wanna give you all my love, but you don't deserve it yet. Baby, I'ma need your best, your best, your best. You got me in the middle, just a tad, just a little. Got me in the middle. You got me stuck on you. Got me in the middle, just a tad, just a little. Got me in the middle. You got me stuck on you, you, stuck on you. Yeah, yeah.